Hey, Service Nation! So excited to be with you. I'm actually at my brand new, our new place up in Prescott, Arizona. I wish I could share the view with you because it's amazing, but I'm too lazy to figure out how to take the cameras and move them. And I'm in my big comfy chair, so you guys are just going to have to trust me on that one. All right, today we are going to talk about something I probably get asked weekly. Um, Employees or contractors for your service company, which is better, which is worse? Can I do it? And of course, I want to start. Hey, the shed stead. I don't know what that means, but it sounds cool, and I think it sounds like something I need in my life. The shed stead, like maybe you build sheds. I don't know, but I like it. All right. So all that to say, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but I'm telling you, I'm not a lawyer. I do not. I have had labor attorneys, kind of working for me to make sure that I'm following the law. The laws are the same for federal. There's some laws in the United States that are federal, some are state. Certainly, I can't be expert, or I'm not an expert in any of the 50 states, even the one that I work in, and we get to Canada, all that sort of stuff. It changes. So I'm not a lawyer. This is not expert legal advice. This is a guy that has had lots and lots of employees and contractors and has had lots of conversations with attorneys that were super expensive. And I'm going to do the best I can to share whatever value I can with you guys on that. So the problem is employees can feel and be very expensive and risky, and there's a lot that goes with them. But and especially in the United States, and I'm guessing it's the same in Canada and wherever you're listening around the world, the government can be really unclear as to what defines a contractor. So there's really kind of two conversations we need to have. One is, should I have a employer contractor? And then actually that's the second one. The first one is, are the people that are working for me legally contractors or employees, right? If they are employees by law, I would, of course, encourage you to hire them as W-2 employees. They're W-2 in the United States. They may be called something different outside of the States. But yes, I would recommend, if they are legally employees, you should hire them as employees, right? You're opening yourself up to a bunch of risk and liability if you classify them and pay taxes on them or don't pay taxes based on them being contractors, but legally they are contractors. And I don't want to get way deep into that, but do you control their time? Do you provide them with supplies? So in some states, do you give them training? Like in California, it's almost impossible as a service company to have contractors, not employees, right? So the first thing is legally, and this is where you talk to a labor attorney. They're going to probably go over some of the same things we just did in terms of, do you control their time? Do you provide them supplies? Do you give them training? How much influence do you have over them? Do you require them to use certain things, show up at certain times, all that sort of stuff, and they can make a distinction for you. Unfortunately, for a lot of you, there's not going to be a clear. There's going to be some gray, right? I wish the government would just say, here's the daggum standard, and we can move forward, but that's not the case. So first check is, are they legally W-2 employees as defined in my country and state? If you've got a competent labor employee that says, yes, they're legally W-2 employees, you can tell the government, just like taxes, right? If your accountant says you owe X amount, you can just not pay it, right? But if they catch you, they tend to put you in jail for that sort of stuff. So same thing with I don't know if you go to jail, but they'll fine the crap out of you. You don't pay that, you probably will go to jail. So um, obviously, I shouldn't say this, should be obvious. If you know that you have employees, I would not recommend rolling those dice of, I'm just going to pretend that they are contractors, right? And then hope I don't get caught. Sure, you could. There's people that do that and probably never get caught. Wouldn't coach it. I think that risk of, that's like going, I could not have liability insurance, and maybe I'll never have a catastrophic thing that puts me out of business. I'll roll the dice, and it'll save you however much every month. Wouldn't recommend it. Wouldn't coach it. It's possible, just not what I'd coach. Okay, so once we've solved that, if you're in the category where it's like, well, I could kind of set up my business in a way to have contractors or employees, let's talk about that. So here's the thing. So many people think that W-2 employees is this big headache. Honest to goodness, it's not. Especially nowadays, right? When I was younger and started this thing and I had W-2 employees for my cleaning company, holy heck, doing payroll is a big deal. There's like nine in the States. There's 941, 945, the W-3. There's just a lot of stuff that you had to do, and there still is. I know. I wish I could say, hey, our government's made it much easier now to have employees. That's not the case at all. But companies like ADP and Paychecks, and there's a bunch of them, big and small, do that for you for a pretty reasonable fee. Usually you can get a payroll process for $100, a couple $100, depending on how many people are in it. And just to have a $200 or $300 expense every month and have that handled is so easy, right? And I'm telling you, some of you guys, gals, are gonna be like, Jessica says, nice new setup. It's the same setup. I just moved it from Phoenix to Prescott, so it's new to me, and that I can have this beautiful view of the mountains, and it's awesome. So I might be 12% happier, but hopefully, yeah, if this is nicer and new. Oh, and my chair is different. I didn't bring up the chair. I had a different chair. Anyway, but I like my stand-up desk so well. I got the same stand-up desk. You guys can't see it, but trust me, it's awesome. It's called Fully, by the way, and it stands up sometimes. Maybe next time I'll stand so I can have more energy. All right. So the beautiful thing is with these companies now, for a couple $100, you can have payroll handled, right? And some of you guys are, I'll do it myself. I'll save somebody. Please, 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 please don't do that. If you ever get sideways with the IRS and owe the money, of all the people you owe money to, other than the mob, maybe, and even then it might be close. The IRS is not who you want to. Hi, you owe me 50 in the house. Good to have you, man. All right. That said, you don't want to owe money to them. The people worse than the IRS is the freaking sales tax people. Because the IRS is, again, money I've earned that by law, they say this is my portion. And you can feel how you want to feel about that, but that's the law. Sales tax and employee withholding, that's money that's not yours. They're just trusting you to take money from one person and give it to them. So it's not your money that you're trying to fight them for. It's someone else's money that they owe, and you're taking. They really get pissy about that. So if you're ever going to not pay somebody, don't let it be your sales tax, and don't let it be. And for service companies, depending on the state, most services aren't taxed, only products. But I think Jessica's in here, and I think New Jersey, maybe New York, I think you have to pay tax on services too. So don't get sideways with the sales tax folk, and don't get sideways with the employee withholding folk. And the problem is a lot of these taxes are due quarterly. So we can be like, oh, I'll hold them because I don't want to waste the money, and then I'll pay them when the quarter comes up, but then something comes up and we spend the money, and it's a dirty game. You don't want to do it. So all that to say, spend a couple $100, hire a payroll company, be done with it. The reality is your customers pay for. Oh, and so that's the cheap part, is getting the payroll process. A lot of you guys are going, but Mike, you don't understand. Workers' compensation is expensive, and now I've got to pay, what's this FUTA, SUTA, federal unemployment, state unemployment, Social Security. And again, these are states' terms, but we coach in multiple different countries, and they all have their version of crap that you have to pay as an employer. And that can be 20% extra, right? Like, and you're like, I can't afford that. Here's the reality. So you're like, I can afford the $200-300 for payroll, but I can't afford the 20 or 30% extra. Well, let's set this down. We got to, as always, with most business problems, it's the issue is mindset and how we're looking at the problem as much, if not more than the problem. So the reality is that you only have two kinds of competitors. The kinds of competitors that, and let's assume, so here's the thing. You have two kinds of competitors, one that have contractors and one that have employees, right? So the reality is you're not really, if you choose to have W-2 employees, you're not really competing with the contracted folks. Because here's the thing. If, and again, we'll just be honest here. For most of us, and it depends on the industry, if we do a contractor, the agreement is, hey, I'm not going to pay your Social Security. You got to pay your own. I'm not going to pay your workers' compensation. You got to pay your own. So we quote unquote save the money for the workers' compensation. But the problem is, if they get hurt, certainly in the United States, everyone's going to sue everybody, and you're at a massive exposure, right? Especially if they go back and go, hey, this is a W-2 employee. You claimed he was a contractor, but he really wasn't, or she really wasn't, and you didn't pay workers' compensation insurance. That's a massive liability that you are not going to want. So if you are competing with people that are contractors, you can kind of sell the people's homes and businesses that you're going to be in on the fact that, hey, we have workers' compensation insurance. We are a real company. These are actual employees. So there is a benefit to your customers in having W-2 employees, that there's kind of some more authority. They know that they're insured. You've got the proper insurances. So the beautiful thing is, everybody that has W-2 employees has those same expenses as you are. So you're not really, and the people that don't have that, for me, I wouldn't want a cleaner in my house that didn't have proper insurance, and people that were, if they got hurt in my house, there's no insurance for them. Like, that would make me uncomfortable. So for me, I would only take people that are kind of licensed and have the right insurance and are employed and stuff like that. So just understand, all of the fellow people that are using W-2 have the same competition. And if you're like, well, yeah, but now I can't compete with the people that are contractors. Well, I guess then you could be a contractor person. But so each has its kind of pro and con, right? The having employees more expensive, but you can tell them they have workers' compensation. You can hire kind of real people. A lot of times when they're under the table folk, they're not the best quality, because the contractor is really meant to be, if it's a real contractor, right? Like if you hired our company to do some sort of consulting for you, that's a contractor. We're not employees of you. We're contractors. So you just want to make sure that you understand, if you should be W-2, you'll only be competing with people that have W-2 employees. And if there's people that are just using contractors to compete with you, that's a very big competitive advantage you can kind of use for your deal. So, yeah, your customers knowing who is in their building and what kind of insurance they have, and is everything legal and above board, can be a huge competitive advantage. You just have to make sure you communicate that to them. And again, with the whole workers' comp, which depending on the state that you're in and the type of service that you do, right? If you're an electrician, workers' comp can be a ton, because there's actually on the job. If you're hiring a salesperson or a secretary, the workers' comp's not a lot. Pool cleaning or house cleaning can be more. Like the more like service you're doing, installing air conditioning, that can be expensive because people get hurt. But the reality is, if they're contractors, supposedly they're going to get their own, but we know as well as everyone, they're not going to get their own, right? They typically don't do that. And then now that liability is like, does that extend to our customers? It certainly extends to you as a business. And we're not even talking about the moral situation. If somebody gets hurt, and we're like, it doesn't work. So, all right. What else are we talking about? So yeah. And again, like we started at the beginning, don't go with, I'll just tell the government their contract will be okay. The government will unilaterally decide retroactively if they are and or were contractors or employees. So if you kind of tell them wrong and they come back, they're not just gonna be like, oh, big miscommunication, just get it fixed going forward and be on your way. The government better than that, right? There's fees and taxes and it's all sorts of stuff. So this money that it saved you before might be a massive amount that honestly might put you out of business or into bankruptcy. So it's not something that we want. And again, like we talked about at the beginning, unfortunately, I wish I just had the magic bullet. Like, well, if they work more than 30 hours, they're this, but the government's got a lot of guidelines, but guidelines like, do you control their time? It's like, well, obviously if I want them to do something for money that takes time, I have influence over their time. It's like, well, is it Monday through Friday, 8 to 5? And you're like, yeah, no, they can kind of come and go. I got 2 or 3 jobs that they can do in a day, and they can start and finish when they want, but they do have to do it that day. It's like, well, that's semi-controlling their time, but that's not the only standard. On top of that, it's like, well, how much training do you do? Do they use your equipment? It's like, well, they have their own tools, but they're installing our equipment. Is it your truck or theirs? So it's tough. So really there's kind of 3 things. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so please talk to a lawyer, but this is just the distillation of all the lawyer talk I've had. There's behavioral control, like when and where they work, training. And again, and where to purchase supplies. And again, we've done a lot of work with owners of cleaning companies, and for all of you guys, like, generally, yeah, you want to tell them where to purchase supplies, right? Could you imagine? And a lot of people are like, oh, I make them buy their own supplies. Okay, then each client is going to get their own result, right? Could you imagine each McDonald's is like, buy the French fries wherever you want, or buy the hamburgers wherever you want? That's a bad scene. So we want to make sure that if you need to give them proper training, if you need to control their time, if you need to tell them what supplies to use, they're probably a W-2 contractor. Obviously, if you have financial control, and the relationship is the expectation that the relationship will continue indefinitely. That is an indicator that it's a W-2. So I guess the short version of all this talk is, for me, 90% of the time I coach my folks. Well, first of all, 100% of the time, if you talk to a labor lawyer in your state or province, and they say the relationship that you have with these workers is a employee-employer relationship, 100% of the time I'm going to coach you to hire them. And if you think it's expensive, again, your customers are going to pay for that, and they should expect to pay more for, now you're a real company, right? It's one thing if you're just introducing one person to another. That's a different model. But if you're really in a service business, especially if there's products involved, like with pool cleaning, electricity, HVAC, right? There's a lot of things where you're buying supply. It really gets muddy. So 100% of the time, if you actually have a employee-employer relationship, I would immediately do it. And again, even if something does go wrong and you quote unquote get in trouble, at least if you start now, you can be like, hey, in good faith, as soon as I thought that this was a employer-employee relationship, I switched it, right? I think if you hire them today and then something goes wrong a year from now and they look back 2 or 3 years, I have a feeling they'll be more lenient. You're like, hey, I did it. I changed. But if you get caught now before you've made that switch, you're like, oh, I was just about to, I think they're going to stick it to you. So I would, if you have an employer-employee relationship, I would make that change as soon as possible and pass that cost on to your customers, because they're going to expect to pay more when the people in their home are insured properly and they're actually employees and they've got kind of everything's being done above board, right? And there's some people that are like, no, I want to pay cash under the table and let's not pay taxes. those are not the customers I want. Those aren't the employees I want. That's not the business owner I want to be. So I'm guessing there's guys that have had some limited success with that. It's just not what I'd coach you to do. The second piece is, well, let's say we could choose. They're either way. And again, if they're clearly a contractor, like you just don't control, they have lots of time and flexibility. If it makes sense, that's fine. I'm kind of the gray area in the middle is what I'm talking about. 80% of the time for service businesses where you're actually saying, here are some supplies, go into this person's home or business, provide the service at this time with these supplies. I've set up the price and money. I'm going to pay you for it. 80-90% of the time, I'm going to coach you that those are probably employees, not 100, but 80 or 90% of the time. The other thing is, and this can make an effect depending on who you are. We spent a lot of time talking about culture and core values and hiring people that are a philosophical match with you, and it is certainly not impossible with contractors. A lot of the people we have working on our team here are contractors, and we have a great culture, but they're not here, right? They're physically in other places. So we do the best that we can. But I have found historically, certainly if you're in the same place with service businesses, we are, right? Typically, unless you've got, a regional thing. And even then they're still going to be physically based at an office because you have to go physically on site, right? If you are kind of a non-virtual brick and mortar business, which almost every service business is, culture is a big thing either way, but when you're kind of virtual, there's a limitation on what you can do. When you're in person, I've just found it's easier to start, enforce, and encourage the right culture when you've got W-2 employees versus it's hard to be like, hey, we're all part of this team. Or like for us, it's have fun, make money, be real, and help out. It's harder, not impossible, but harder to kind of have that strong culture, run your company. If you don't have, you have to be much better at culture if you're working with 1099 contractors versus employees. So the long story short, all the stuff that we're trying to get to is you don't want to a lot of you guys and gals, and this is the number one thing I want to get out of you doing, is you kind of feel like this. I don't need a system. What I don't know can't hurt me. If I just kind of ignore it long enough, it'll go away. It always has so far. That's possible. But the reality is your business is only as good as the systems that you follow. And what you don't know can absolutely not just hurt you, but it can cost you your entire business. So if you were like, you know what, I want to, and especially this happens when we transition from self-employed worker, right? Like I'm a good electrician and I work for another guy. Now I want to be my own guy. So I have my own thing. And then you start getting kind of helpers, and then you start actually getting other electricians, and you're out of the field. Then you're like, holy crap, I'm really good at electricity, but I'm not great owning a business. Hey, I can't even say your name, but greetings from Aruba on the Instagram. Good to have you. All right, so as we make that transition from kind of I'm working for someone else doing a trade, and this isn't everybody, but it's often, to I could do this my own, and I'm going to kind of provide service to. Holy crap, I need a little bit of help, so I just hire some helpers. To now I'm hiring other tradesmen. To now I'm not even cleaning at all. Oftentimes we kind of miss the systems and processes we need to really scale, and we're like, holy crap, we're good at electricity or electrician or whatever service we provide. I'm great at pool cleaning or whatever. I didn't realize this business was such a tricky thing, right? I just thought if I was the best at installing, HVAC units or, cleaning businesses or whatever your trade is, it'd be great. If you're ready to I really need the systems and processes we need, this is the place for you. If you go to growmyservicecompany.com, there is lots and lots and lots of free resources to help you get where you want to go in life. You can subscribe to the podcast. For our Instagram friends, feel free to direct message me. I'll get you a copy of our book. For our non-Instagram friends, feel free to follow us on Instagram, direct message me or get you a copy of my book. But we've got so many resources to help owners of service companies get more time and money freedom and have the systems and processes they need to free them from the drudgery of kind of doing the work. And then, making big mistakes like employee versus contractor the wrong way that can actually put you out of business. So Service Nation, love you, appreciate you, can't wait to help you. Go to growmyservicecompany.com and find all the cool free stuff we've got waiting for you right now. Talk soon.